Hello, my friend. I am very happy you are here today. Find a comfortable place, take a slow breath, and let us begin another journey through history. Imagine a small village in England. The year is 1642. The winter air is cold. The fields are quiet. Nothing about this place seems important. Nothing about this day seems special. Yet in this small village, a baby is born, a baby who will one day change the way humanity understands the universe. His name is Isaac Newton, but when Isaac entered the world, nobody saw greatness. Nobody saw a genius. Nobody saw a future scientist. What they saw was a tiny, fragile baby. He was born so small that many people feared he would not survive. His mother later said he could have fit inside a large cup. It was difficult to imagine that such a weak child would one day become one of the greatest minds in history. But Isaac's challenges began even before his birth. His father had already died. The boy would never know the man whose name he carried. From his very first day, life was marked by absence, by loss, by loneliness. And those feelings would stay with him for many years. When Isaac was only 3 years old, another painful change arrived. His mother remarried. She moved away to live with her new husband, and young Isaac was left behind. He remained with his grandmother in the countryside, too young to understand, too young to explain his feelings, but old enough to feel abandoned. Many children might have become angry, others might have become bitter. Isaac became quiet, very quiet. He spent long hours alone. He had few friends. He rarely joined large groups of children. Instead, he watched, he observed, he wondered, while other boys ran through fields and shouted with excitement. Isaac often sat by himself, studying, thinking, looking closely at the world around him. He watched shadows move across walls. He watched rain fall from the sky. He watched the wind turn small village windmills, and he asked questions that other people ignored, questions that seemed simple, but questions that would eventually change the world. At school, nobody believed he was extraordinary. His teachers did not immediately recognize a genius. His classmates did not admire him. In fact, for a long time, Isaac seemed completely ordinary, just another quiet boy sitting in the classroom. But inside his mind, something unusual was growing, a deep curiosity, a powerful desire to understand how things worked. Why did shadows move? Why did water flow? Why did the stars travel across the night sky? And perhaps the most important question of all, why did the world behave the way it did? Most people accepted the world as it was. Isaac could not. He wanted answers, and that endless curiosity would become the greatest gift of his life. The lonely boy nobody noticed was slowly becoming something else. Something extraordinary, something the world had never seen before. As Isaac grew older, one thing became increasingly clear. He was different, not stronger, not more popular, not more confident, different. While many children enjoyed games and competitions, Isaac enjoyed ideas. He loved understanding how things worked. He loved taking objects apart and putting them back together. And most of all, he loved solving problems. The world seemed full of mysteries, and Isaac wanted to understand every one of them. In his village, people often saw him building small mechanical models. He created miniature windmills. He made water-powered devices. He built paper kites that floated high into the sky. These were not school assignments. Nobody asked him to do them. He built them simply because he was curious, because he wanted to know what was possible, because his mind never stopped asking questions. Yet despite his intelligence, Isaac was not immediately successful. For a time, he performed only average in school. His teachers did not consider him exceptional. Some classmates even outperformed him. Then something happened. One day, another student insulted him. The details have been lost to history, but the effect was powerful. For perhaps the first time, Isaac became determined to prove himself. He began studying harder, reading more, thinking more deeply. Slowly, His results improved, then they improved again. And before long, the quiet boy who had once been overlooked became one of the strongest students in the school. This moment revealed something important about Newton's character. He was not a genius because everything came easily. He was a genius because he was willing to work longer and think harder than almost anyone else. His curiosity gave him direction, but his discipline gave him power. As the years passed, it became obvious that village life could no longer satisfy his growing mind. He needed more books, more ideas, more challenges. And eventually, that opportunity arrived. In 1661, Isaac Newton left his village and traveled to Cambridge University, one of the most respected centers of learning in England. For many young people, university was simply a place to study. For Isaac Newton, it would become the doorway to a completely different life. At Cambridge, he discovered a world filled with knowledge, mathematics, astronomy, philosophy, science. For the first time, he found people asking the same kinds of questions that had fascinated him since childhood. The lonely boy from Woolsthorpe finally felt that he belonged somewhere, but just as his future seemed to be opening before him, disaster struck England. A deadly disease was spreading across the country. And within a short time, everything changed. When Isaac Newton arrived at Cambridge University, he felt something he had rarely felt before. He felt at home. For years, he had been the quiet boy who asked strange questions, the boy who preferred books to conversations, the boy who spent more time thinking than speaking. But at Cambridge, curiosity was welcomed, questions were encouraged, ideas mattered. For the first time in his life, Isaac found himself surrounded by knowledge. He studied mathematics, he studied astronomy, he studied philosophy, he read the works of great thinkers who had spent their lives trying to understand the universe. Every day seemed to open a new door. Every book revealed a new mystery, and Isaac eagerly stepped through each one. His future appeared bright, but then, without warning, everything changed. In 1665, a deadly disease spread across England. It became known as the Great Plague. People grew frightened. Cities became dangerous. Businesses closed. Families stayed inside their homes. And eventually, Cambridge University shut its doors. Students were sent away. Classes ended. The future suddenly became uncertain for most students. This felt like a disaster. Their education had been interrupted. Their plans had been destroyed. Their progress had stopped. But Isaac Newton was not most students. He returned to his family home in Woolsthorpe, back to the quiet countryside where he had grown up, back to the fields, back to the trees, back to solitude. At first glance, it seemed like a step backward, yet those lonely months would become the most productive period of his entire life. Without professors, without classrooms, without examinations, Isaac was finally free to think, and so he did. For hours, for days, for months, he thought about numbers, he thought about light, he thought about movement, he thought about the stars. Questions filled his mind from morning until night, and slowly, the answers began to appear. He experimented with light, using simple glass prisms. He discovered that white light was not truly white. It contained many colors hidden inside it. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. A rainbow was not creating colors. It was revealing colors that were already there. This discovery alone would have been enough to make many scientists famous, but Newton was only getting started. At the same time, he developed entirely new mathematical ideas, methods so powerful that future generations would use them to build modern science. Today, we call this system calculus. But perhaps the most important question remained unanswered, a question that had quietly followed him since childhood, a question about motion, a question about the heavens, a question about the invisible forces shaping the universe. And one ordinary afternoon, sitting beneath a tree, Isaac Newton would begin to discover the answer. An answer inspired by something so simple that most people would never have noticed it: a falling apple. Millions of apples had fallen from trees throughout history. Farmers had seen it. Children had seen it. Kings had seen it. The sight was so ordinary that nobody paid attention to it. Nobody stopped. Nobody wondered. Nobody asked why. But Isaac Newton was different. He had spent his entire life asking questions. Questions about light. Questions about motion. Questions about the stars. Questions about the hidden rules behind everyday events. And one afternoon, while sitting near his home in Woolsthorpe, he noticed something simple. An apple fell from a tree. Perhaps it landed nearby. Perhaps it simply caught his attention. The exact details have been debated by historians for centuries, but the important part of the story is not the apple itself. The important part is the question that followed. Why did the apple fall downward? Why not upward? Why not sideways? Why did it always move toward the earth? Most people would have ignored the question. Newton could not. He understood that something invisible was pulling the apple, some force, some hidden power, something that could not be seen but could clearly be observed. And then another thought entered his mind, a much bigger thought. If the earth was pulling the apple, could it also be pulling other things? Could it be pulling the moon? Could it be pulling the planets? Could the same invisible force be acting everywhere? Suddenly, the falling apple was no longer just a falling apple. It became a doorway to a much larger mystery. Newton began calculating, observing, comparing, testing his ideas. He worked patiently, carefully, month after month, year after year, slowly. A remarkable picture began to emerge. The force that pulled an apple to the ground was the same force that guided the moon through the sky, the same force that kept planets moving around the sun, the same force that connected every object in the universe. Everything was linked, everything was connected, everything was part of a single system. Newton called this force gravity. Today, the word feels familiar. Children learn it in school. Scientists use it every day. Astronauts depend on understanding it. But in Newton's time, this idea was revolutionary. For centuries, people had watched the heavens and wondered. Now, for the first time, someone had discovered a simple explanation. The universe was not random. It followed laws, invisible laws, reliable laws, beautiful laws, and Newton was beginning to understand them. Yet discovering gravity was only the beginning. Understanding an idea is one thing, proving it to the world is another, and Newton still faced his greatest challenge. He had to convince humanity that he was right. Discovering an idea is exciting. Proving it is much harder. Isaac Newton believed he had uncovered one of the greatest secrets in history. But belief alone was not enough. The scientific world needed evidence, calculation, proof, and Newton understood this better than anyone, so he did what he had always done. He worked, quietly, patiently, relentlessly. For years, he filled notebooks with equations. He checked his calculations again and again. He challenged his own ideas. He searched for mistakes. He refused to publish anything until he was absolutely certain. This was one of Newton's greatest strengths. He was not interested in being famous. He was interested in being correct. Many people today want quick answers, quick success, quick recognition. Newton wanted truth, even if it took years to find. As time passed, word of his brilliance began spreading through England. Scientists and mathematicians heard rumors about the quiet scholar from Cambridge, a man who seemed to understand things nobody else could explain. One of these scientists was Edmund Halley. Today, many people remember Halley because of Halley's comet, but without Halley, the world might never have known the full extent of Newton's genius. Halley visited Newton and listened carefully to his ideas. What he heard amazed him. Newton was describing a universe governed by precise mathematical laws a universe where planets moved according to predictable rules, a universe that could be understood. Halley immediately realized the importance of Newton's work. He encouraged him to publish it. At first, Newton hesitated. He preferred privacy. He disliked criticism, and he knew that extraordinary claims would attract extraordinary attention. But eventually, he agreed. For the next several years, Newton worked harder than ever. He organized decades of thinking into a single masterpiece, and finally, in 1687, the book was published. Its title was long and written in Latin. Most people simply call it the Principia. The Principia became one of the most important books ever written. Inside its pages were Newton's laws of motion, the theory of universal gravitation, and a completely new understanding of how the universe worked. For the first time, humanity could explain both the falling apple and the movement of planets using the same set of rules. The Earth, the Moon, the stars, the oceans, everything followed the same laws. It was a breathtaking idea. Scientists across Europe were astonished. Some struggled to understand the mathematics. Others debated the details. But nearly everyone recognized that something extraordinary had happened. A new age of science had begun, and at its center stood a quiet man who had once been an overlooked child in a small English village. The lonely boy nobody noticed had become the man everyone was talking about. But success brought new challenges. Because the higher Newton rose, the more people questioned him, and some of those questions would lead to conflicts that followed him for years. By the late 1680s, Isaac Newton had become one of the most respected thinkers in Europe. His book, The Principia, had transformed science. His ideas were spreading across countries. Scholars discussed his work, students studied his discoveries, and scientists began using his methods to understand the natural world. For many people, this would have been a moment of complete happiness, a moment to celebrate, a moment to relax. But Newton was not like most people. Success did not make his life easier. In some ways, it made it more complicated. The more famous he became, the more criticism he faced. The more influential his ideas became, the more people challenged them. Newton was brilliant, but he was also deeply sensitive. He did not enjoy conflict, yet conflict seemed to find him anyway. One of the most famous disagreements of his life involved another remarkable mathematician, a man named Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. Leibniz was intelligent, creative, respected, and like Newton, he had developed a powerful new form of mathematics. Today, we know it as calculus. The problem was simple. Both men believed they had created it first. Neither wanted to surrender credit. What began as a disagreement slowly grew into a bitter dispute. Supporters chose sides. Arguments spread across Europe. Letters were exchanged. Accusations were made. The conflict lasted for years, and it left deep scars on everyone involved. Looking back, historians now believe that both men made extraordinary contributions. Both helped shape modern mathematics, but at the time, neither side could see the situation clearly. Pride had become part of the story, and pride often clouds judgment. Newton's struggles were not limited to scientific disputes. Despite all his achievements, he remained a private man. He had few close friends. He never married. He never had children. Much of his life was spent alone with books, ideas, and questions. Some people admired this dedication. Others wondered whether his search for knowledge had come at a personal cost. Yet Newton never seemed interested in an ordinary life. His curiosity remained as strong as ever. Even after revolutionizing science, he continued searching for answers. He studied ancient texts. He explored religious questions. He spent years investigating alchemy, the mysterious attempt to understand the hidden nature of matter. Many people find this surprising. Why would one of history's greatest scientists spend time studying such unusual subjects? The answer reveals something important about Newton. He was not simply searching for facts. He was searching for meaning. He wanted to understand the hidden order behind everything. The stars, nature, mathematics, human existence. To Newton, all of these questions were connected, and no matter how much he discovered, there was always another mystery waiting beyond the horizon. That endless curiosity had carried him from a lonely childhood to worldwide fame, and it would continue guiding him through the final chapters of his remarkable life. By the beginning of the 18th century, Isaac Newton was no longer just a scientist. He had become a symbol of intelligence, a symbol of discovery, a symbol of what one human mind could accomplish through patience, curiosity, and determination. The lonely child from Woolsthorpe had traveled farther than anyone could have imagined. His ideas had crossed borders, his books had reached distant countries, and his discoveries were helping people understand the universe in entirely new ways. But Newton's life was changing once again. After many years at Cambridge, he moved to London. The city was larger, busier, more powerful, and there, Newton entered a new chapter of public service. He became the master of the Royal Mint. The Royal Mint was responsible for producing England's coins. At the time, counterfeit money was a serious problem. Criminals created fake coins and damaged trust in the nation's economy. Many people viewed the position as ceremonial. Newton did not. As always, he approached the challenge seriously. He studied the problem carefully. He investigated counterfeiters, he improved systems, and he helped restore confidence in England's currency. Once again, his attention to detail made a difference. Whether he was studying gravity or coins, Newton applied the same principle. Look carefully, think deeply, solve the problem. His reputation continued to grow. In 1703, he became president of the Royal Society, one of the most important scientific organizations in the world. For 24 years, he led the institution, helping shape the future of science, encouraging research, supporting discovery, guiding a new generation of thinkers. Then came another extraordinary honor. In 1705, Queen Anne awarded him a knighthood. From that moment forward, he became Sir Isaac Newton. This was a rare recognition, especially for a scientist. It was proof that his achievements were admired not only by scholars, but also by the highest levels of society. The boy who had once been overlooked was now one of the most respected men in England. Yet despite the honors, Newton remained much the same. He still spent long hours reading, still filled notebooks with ideas, still searched for answers, still believed there was more to learn. Because for Newton, knowledge was never a destination. It was a journey, and no matter how far he traveled, another question always waited ahead. As the years passed, his hair turned gray, his body grew older, but his curiosity never faded. The same curiosity that had guided him as a lonely child still burned inside him, quietly, steadily, like a light that refused to go out. And soon, that remarkable journey would reach its final chapter. Isaac Newton spent his entire life searching for answers. He searched in books. He searched in mathematics. He searched in light. He searched in the movement of planets. And he searched in the quiet mysteries of the universe. For decades, he had been one of the most respected men in Europe. His discoveries transformed science. His ideas influenced generations. His name became known around the world. Yet Newton never seemed completely satisfied, not because he was unhappy, but because he understood something most people did not. The more you learn, the more you realize how much remains unknown. Every answer reveals another question. Every discovery opens another door, and Newton spent his life walking through those doors. As he grew older, his health slowly declined, his body weakened, his energy faded, but his mind remained active. He continued reading, continued thinking, continued asking questions. The same curiosity that had guided him as a child never disappeared. It remained with him until the very end. Then, In 1727, Isaac Newton's remarkable journey came to a close. He was 84 years old, an extraordinary age for that time in history. He died peacefully in his sleep. The news spread quickly across England, and then across Europe. People understood that they had lost someone extraordinary. Not just a scientist, not just a mathematician, but a man who had changed humanity's understanding of reality itself. When Newton was buried, he received one of the greatest honors England could offer. He was laid to rest in Westminster Abbey, the resting place of kings, queens, and national heroes. Thousands came to pay their respects. Many had never met him, yet they felt they knew him through his work, through his discoveries, through the questions he had helped answer. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about Newton's story is this. If you had met him as a child, you probably would not have predicted his future. You would have seen a quiet boy, a lonely boy, a boy who spent too much time thinking, a boy who asked strange questions. Nothing about him seemed destined for greatness. And yet, greatness found him. Not because he was the loudest, not because he was the strongest, not because he was the most popular, but because he never stopped being curious. He never stopped paying attention. He never stopped asking why. And in the end, that simple habit changed the world. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson Isaac Newton leaves behind. Extraordinary discoveries often begin with ordinary questions. A falling apple, a moving shadow, a beam of light. Most people see them and move on. Newton stopped, looked closer, and changed history. More than 300 years have passed since Isaac Newton died. The world has changed beyond anything he could have imagined. We have airplanes, computers, satellite, smartphones, space stations orbiting the Earth, machines capable of exploring distant planets. Modern life would seem almost magical to people living in Newton's time. And yet, beneath all of these advances, his ideas remain every day, without realizing it. We live in a world shaped by Isaac Newton. When an engineer designs a bridge, when a pilot flies an airplane, when a rocket launches into space, when a satellite circles the Earth, Newton's laws are quietly at work. His discoveries became the foundation upon which modern science was built. Generations of scientists followed the path he helped create. Albert Einstein expanded our understanding of gravity. Astronomers explored distant galaxies. Engineers built incredible machines. But all of them began from a foundation that Newton helped establish. That is why many historians consider him one of the most influential people who ever lived. Not because he ruled a nation, not because he commanded armies, not because he accumulated wealth, but because he changed how humanity thinks. Before Newton, the universe seemed mysterious and unpredictable. After Newton, people began to see patterns, rules, order, possibilities. He showed that nature could be understood, that questions could be answered, that mysteries could become knowledge, and perhaps even more importantly, he showed the power of curiosity. One person, one question, one observation, that was enough to begin a revolution in human understanding. Many people believe greatness comes from talent alone. Newton's life tells a different story. Talent mattered, but curiosity mattered more. Patience mattered more. Persistence mattered more. He spent years studying ideas that others ignored, years working quietly while nobody noticed, years searching for answers that seemed impossible to find. Most people would have given up. Newton did not. That is why his story continues to inspire people today. Not because he was perfect, not because he knew everything, but because he never stopped learning. And in a world that changes every day, that lesson remains as valuable as ever. The universe still holds countless mysteries. Questions still wait to be answered. And somewhere, perhaps right now, another curious child is looking at something ordinary and asking a simple question. Why Isaac Newton discovered gravity? He explained motion. He transformed mathematics. He changed science forever. Those achievements alone would have secured his place in history. Yet if you look closely at his life, you may discover something even more important. Newton's greatest contribution was not a formula, not an equation, not even gravity itself. It was a way of thinking. Before Newton, many people accepted the world without questioning it. Things happened because they happened. The stars moved because they moved. Objects fell because they fell. Mysteries remained mysteries. Newton refused to accept easy answers. He believed every event had a reason. Every pattern had an explanation. Every mystery could be explored. He taught humanity to look closer, to think deeper, to question assumptions. And that way of thinking changed everything. Because science is not a collection of facts. Science is a process. A way of seeing the world. Newton understood that better than almost anyone. There is a famous quote often connected to him, a quote that reveals his humility. Near the end of his life, Newton reflected on his achievements and said, "I do not know what I may appear to the world, but to myself, I seem to have been only like a boy playing on the seashore, while the great ocean of truth lay all undiscovered before me." Think about those words for a moment. One of the greatest minds in human history, a man who changed science forever, and yet he still felt like a child standing beside an endless ocean, still learning, still searching, still discovering. Perhaps that is why Newton remained so inspiring. He never believed he knew everything. The more he learned, the more he appreciated the vastness of what remained unknown. That attitude protected him from arrogance. It kept him curious. It kept him growing. And maybe that is the lesson we need most today. Not simply to become smarter, not simply to learn more facts, but to remain curious, to remain open, to remain willing to ask questions, because every great discovery begins the same way, with a person who notices something others ignore, with a person who pauses instead of rushing past, with a person who dares to ask why. Isaac Newton's life began with loneliness. It began with loss. It began with uncertainty. No one looked at the small boy from Woolsthorpe and imagined that he would change the world. No one expected him to become one of history's greatest thinkers. No one predicted that his ideas would still influence humanity hundreds of years later. And perhaps that is what makes his story so powerful. Newton was not born with fame. He was not born with wealth. He was not born with special advantages. What he possessed was something far more valuable: curiosity, a simple desire to understand, a willingness to ask questions, a determination to keep searching when answers were difficult to find, again and again. Life gave Newton reasons to stop. His father died before he was born. His mother left when he was young. He spent much of his childhood alone. The plague interrupted his education. He faced criticism, conflict, disappointment. Yet through every challenge, one thing remained constant. He kept learning, he kept thinking, he kept asking why, and that habit changed everything. Today, most of us will never discover a new law of physics. Most of us will never write a book that transforms science. Most of us will never have our names remembered for centuries. But that does not mean Newton's story is not relevant to us, because his greatest lesson has nothing to do with gravity. It has nothing to do with mathematics. It has nothing to do with fame. His greatest lesson is about attention, the ability to notice, to observe, to stay curious, to keep learning. Every skill begins with curiosity. Every improvement begins with curiosity. Every breakthrough begins with curiosity. The people who change their lives are often the people who continue asking questions after everyone else has stopped. Newton never lost that ability. Even as he grew older, even as he became famous, even as the world praised him, he remained a student of the universe. And perhaps that is why he became great. Not because he had all the answers, but because he never stopped looking for them. That is a lesson that belongs to all of us, no matter our age, no matter our background, no matter where our journey begins, because every extraordinary future begins with a simple question: and the courage to ask it. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the life of Isaac Newton. From a lonely boy in a small English village to one of the greatest minds in human history, his story reminds us that extraordinary achievements often begin in the quietest places. Newton changed the way we understand the universe, but perhaps more importantly, he showed us the power of curiosity, the power of patience, and the power of never giving up on a question that matters. If this story inspired you, I would love to hear from you. What part of Newton's journey stayed with you the most? Was it his lonely childhood, his years of discovery, the falling apple, or the lesson he left behind for future generations? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy learning English through powerful stories from history, be sure to subscribe and join us again. There are many more remarkable lives waiting to be explored. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and never stop asking why.